Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you again with another deck profile, and today's focus is going to be on the Tearlament Yubel deck that I actually showcased a few weeks ago. Originally, I wasn't going to do another deck profile on this until after Legacy of Destruction release, because that's when Nightmare Throne and the Gravescormer Retrain get, officially released to the public, and by that point, the deck completely changes with those two cards. Just, Gravescormer can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon Yubels, or just any fiends in general. Nightmare Throne fills up your graveyard really fast too, but with all the useful information that I got from the last video through the comments or just general testing as well, and obtaining new cards through friends to borrow, I was able to kind of completely revamp the deck, and I feel like the changes are substantial enough to actually be able to warrant showing that off. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into the deck profile. Now, of course, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup, but we're going to be focusing on the Yubel portion first. So as a result, we're going to be playing 3 Spirit of Yubel. This is pretty much one of the main cards that you always want to open up with. Even if you can't get it into the graveyard or destroy it, that's perfectly fine because of its effect, where it's essentially Battle Fader, where if your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then, it does Yubel things. So it can't be destroyed by battle, you take no battle damage. If it's destroyed, it's able to trigger its other effect to special summon the original Yubel from your banish, grave, deck, hand, whatever. It just does everything. And then on special summon as well, it also searches or sets, either or. You can choose to do either option. Typically you want to search out Nightmare Pain though, especially if it's during your opponent's turn, just so that you don't end up losing it accidentally because they Nightmare Phoenix or SP Little Knighted away or something. But yeah, this card, you have to play 3 of it. It's that important to the deck. And even in the traditional Yubel, obviously, this card is pretty much the main starter that gets your engine going a lot of the time. And then to complement that, we're going to be playing 3 Samsara D Lotus. So in the previous build, I only played 2 Samsara Lotus because I wanted to make sure my normal summon was always Tearlaments Reinoheart. But for this specific version, it doesn't really matter which one we normal summon. It can be the Samsara Lotus, it can be the Dark Beckoning Beast, it can be the Reinoheart. Eventually, we're going to be able to get to all our combo pieces just because of the new engines that we're incorporating into the deck. So, it's a pretty good card. You tribute it. It's not a quick effect, so if your opponent veilers or imperms it, don't activate its effect because it will not resolve. But if you're able to, for example, link it off and then bring it back, then you can attempt to activate its effect again. And essentially, at that point, it just baited out a hand trap for free. So it's pretty good. And then it special summons Yubel monster from your deck. So typically, you're going to special summon your Spirit of Yubel, trigger its effect to search the spell or trap. And then during the end phase, if you control a face-up Yubel, not a Yubel monster, a face-up Yubel, you're able to either add this card to your hand or special summon it. So, and then on top of that, it's a pseudo-negate also, right? Because if your opponent activates a monster effect, you contribute this card, and then you change that monster's effect to destroy one Yubel monster on the field. So it does a lot for this deck, whether it's a starter or a negate or just whatever. But yeah, I definitely feel like the change to 3 did matter a lot compared to the previous build where I only had it at 2. And then for the original Yubels, you just play the one original Yubel. You don't need more than that. If it gets banished, as long as it's not banished face down, you can always get it back. And then the one Yubel Terror Incarnate. We don't play Ultimate Nightmare because it isn't brick, but there are some times in me where I just want to play because it is a little bit funny. But that's neither here or there. It's fine. And then for the final portion of the Yubel engine, we just play the one Dark Beckoning Beast. So as I stated previously, in normal Yubel decks, you'd be playing this card at 2 or even 3. But because this is a Tearlament deck, it's not really as required per se, especially because even if you draw this, right, that would automatically mean that something like your opening of the Spirit Gates is a break in your hand. However, because we play the Tearlament cards, we're always able to shuffle this back, and then after, for example, we just normal summon this, add opening of the Spirit Gates, we get a Tearlament monster engraved, we shuffle them back, then our Spirit Gates is live, and we have a fusion monster that we can use as material for something else. So yeah, you pretty much never have an issue with just playing the one, but if you want to play more, that's totally valid as well, especially if you want to focus more on the normal summon Dark Beckoning Beast, normal summon Samsara D Lotus line into the either a Yubel monster or an instant Unchained board, which spoiler alert, we're not going to be playing the Unchained version this time just because I wanted to try out other stuff, but it's still extremely valid in this deck if you want to try it out. But with that, that's the Yubel portion, and now we can move on to the Tearlament portion. We're going to be starting off first with 3 Tearlaments Kashtira. On normal or special summon, it mills 3, and then when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, it mills 2 more. Just a really good card, especially once the Gravescormer card comes out, because like I said, we want to mill as many cards as possible to help ensure that our Gravescormer comes out or gets milled eventually, so that we can just special summon our Yubels or just any fiends pretty much at the drop of a hat, and then our grind game just becomes way better as well. And it's only going to get crazier once fandom or yeah, Phantom of Yubel releases, because we just mill everything and then we shuffle our resources back into the graveyard and get a free fusion, and things can get really out of hand really fast, if I'm being honest. Then to go with that, we're only playing 2 Tearlaments Reinoheart. Previously, I was playing 3, and I basically just swapped the ratio between the Samsara Lotus and the Reinoheart, just because, like I said, it doesn't really matter which one we normal summon. We're going to get to both engines eventually, so... And I guess technically, if you want to like focus more on like the Yubel aspect, the Samsara D Lotus is better. But if you want to focus more on the Tearlament aspect, then you go on the 3 Reinoheart. But it's fine either way. It really does not matter in the long run. But yeah, so 2 Reinoheart, and then the 1 of fusion summoners being the 1 Havnis, the 1 Scheiren, and the 1 Merrli. And that's pretty much the same as last time. Like I said, I pretty much only swapped out the 1 Reinoheart with the 1 Samsara D Lotus. But I did add a bunch of other monsters as well this time, and we're going to be playing a Horus engine this time. So we're playing 3 Imsety Glory of Horus and the 1 Hapi Guidance of Horus, and this does a couple of different things. So first off, previously I had a lot of trouble getting cards into my graveyard, just like in general, right? Because your main discard outlet would pretty much just be like Scheiren, discard a Yubel monster or whatever, and then hope that you can mill. But thanks to the Horus cards, and let me just put Imsety up in front really quick. Thanks to the Horus engine, we can pretty much discard anything that we want, whether it's through Imsety or King Sarcophagus, which we are playing as well, because you have to play that if you're playing the Horus engine, right? You can pretty much just immediately fill your graveyard with as many monsters as you want, and then on top of that, these cards provide another insta threat that they have to deal with, just as opposed to like previously, where sure they had to deal with the Yubel and the Tearlament portion. Now they also have to deal with the Horus engine, which can be a lot to overwhelm a lot of decks pretty easily, if I'm being honest, especially once you get to like Vampire or the Zombie Vampire. You know, you're milling 4, you get a reborn something back, you're hitting spells and traps, you're getting things in your graveyard, and like I always say, it gets out of hand really fast for your opponent, and that's pretty much what we're aiming to do. We're not playing anything like board breakers or hand traps, because we're just basically having faith in our engine to get the job done. So we want as much gas as possible, and this is probably one of the best cards to help us do that. And then for the final monster, we're just playing 2 Kashtira Fenrir. It's a phenomenal card. What can I say? The moment it hits the board, it's a threatening presence because it threatens to banish your opponent's monsters face down. It gives you access to your Tearlaments Kashtira, which in turn turns on your milling aspect. It's great fodder in the graveyard if you're able to get it in there, just because it means you don't have to banish a Tearlament card. It does so much for the deck, and it's just, yeah, it's a phenomenal card, and I almost want to put it up to 3, honestly, because in a lot of cases it just feels like the best starter, and it's definitely something I'm considering once Legacy of Destruction releases, because you want to have access to your Tearlament engine as often as possible, and just playing 3 Fenrirs to help ensure that you actually get it is a pretty solid choice. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion of the deck. Now, when it comes to the spell and trap lineup, it's honestly really small compared to the monster lineup, just because I always want to fit my decks under 40. But even so, it's fine the way it is. You know, like I said, we're not playing any board breakers or anything like that. We're just playing pure gas to try and break through our opponent's board through the belief that our deck can do it. So as a result, we're playing 3 Primeval Planet Perlereino. On activation, it searches any Tearlament monster, so you can add your Reinohearts, your Scheirens, your Tear Caches. Heck, you can even add like a Havnis or a Merrli if your hand is that good. It just does everything, and then on top of that, it boosts all your fusion monsters and your Tearlament monsters by 500 attack. If a Tearlament monster is shuffled back into the deck, it gets to pop a card. What more can I say? This card it does so much. And then to go with that, you have our 3 Nightmare Pains, another card that you pretty much hope that you're always going to be able to open with, because it also does so much for the deck. It's able to destroy any dark monster or on your field or in your hand in order to add 1 card that mentions Yubel in its card text or is Yubel, except itself, obviously, but it doesn't really matter. You pretty much never want to add Nightmare Pain off Nightmare Pain, so yeah, it's fine. But there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with this, right? For example, you just go activate Tearlaments Scheiren, mill 3, discard 1, special summon it, and then after that, because typically if they don't stop Scheiren, that means they don't have Ash Blossom, and if they don't have Ash Blossom, this next play is phenomenal, because you go Nightmare Pain, pop the Scheiren as Samsara D Lotus, normal summon the Samsara D Lotus after you fusion summon with your Scheiren, of course, and then by them pretty much admitting that they don't have Ash, you're free to go into like all your Yubel plays, and hopefully you can just overwhelm your opponent pretty quickly after that. But yeah, this card's really good, and then on top of that, it forces your opponent to attack all your Yubel monsters. and they don't have a choice, right? They have to go into the battle phase if they can, and they have to attack the Yubel cards, just because the card does that for some reason. So pretty good. I really enjoy it. Yeah, you definitely have to play 3 of it. And then the only other 3 of spell that we play is Opening of the Spirit Gates. So like I said, even though we only play the 1 Dark Beckoning Beast, because we play the Tearlament monsters, we can always shuffle that back. So even if we hard draw it, this card isn't going to be a break as long as we can get access to our tier cards. And this is probably, out of all 3 of these, this is the one that I always want to open the most, just because it gives you so much grind game and so many combo opportunities compared to the others. Because even if we're not normal summoning the Dark Beckoning Beast, it's perfectly fine. Just being able to bring back your Yubels from your graveyard, or even adding back your continuous spells if you have a level 10 monster on the field, it adds so much versatility to your plays. Because, like I said, this deck mills a lot, so you're going to hit key cards eventually. And no matter what it is, you're pretty much always going to be able to add those back as long as you have this on the field. And then on the following turn, this is probably like one of the best cards just to have in general for follow-up, just because it brings back your resources, you know, and then it just brings back everything. Like I can't stress enough how good this card is in this deck. But yeah, you got to play 3 Opening of the Spirit Gates. We're only playing 2 Tearlaments Scream, just because thanks to the Horus engine, I feel like we're typically going to mill more than enough. So you don't really need to, you know, play 3 of this to see this every time. And even then, like, we're more than comfortable milling this card because of Opening of the Spirit Gates, right? You get to mill Tearlaments Scream, you trigger its effect to add a trap. Then as long as you have a face-up level 10 with Opening, you can add this card back to your hand, then you can activate it, and then your plays just continue to snowball from there. And the same concept can pretty much be applied to King Sarcophagus, which you don't have to open this. As long as you mill it and you have Opening of the Spirit Gates, you have access to your Horus engine. I cannot stress enough how good this like this synergy is, if I'm being honest. Like, you just mill everything. It doesn't matter if you don't have it in your opening hand, because at some point you will be able to add them back. And yeah, it's so good. But yeah, that's it for those. And then we just have a couple of one-ofs, being the 1 Foolish Burial and the 1 Tearlaments Grief, which is essentially a Foolish Burial or emergency teleport depending on what you have on the field. They both essentially just do the same thing, you know. Just either you special summon or you mill a Tearlaments card. That's it. And that's it for the spell lineup. And then we do play 2 traps, the first one being the Eternal Favorite. The card's okay. You're typically not really going to be able to super poly your opponent, and that's perfectly fine, you know. We basically just use this as like a resource card to add back our Yubels or special summon them back, especially during like the battle phase when our opponents wasted some of their resources to out our cards, right? You just go activate Eternal Favor, bring back the Yubel, and they're still forced to attack it. So it's pretty good, but the super poly effect very rarely comes up, if I'm being honest. And then for the final one, just 1 Tearlament sulliek, you know, send it to the graveyard, search any tier monster. It's also a monster negate if you have a face-up tier monster, and then you don't even have to send the tier card, right? You can send any monster you control. So that's it for the spell and trap lineup, and it's 40 for the main deck as always. Somehow I was able to fit it into 40 cards. Don't know how, but I was. And with that, we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now, compared to last time, even though we're not playing the Unchained engine, for example, we still are pretty link focused for the extra deck. But we're going to be starting off with the Exceed monsters first. So, you know, you have the 1 Bahamut Shark and the 1 Toadally Awesome. It's literally the exact same concept that you see in normal tier decks, where if you play a bunch of Darks and you play Reinoheart, this is just a very good engine that you can play because it's very easy to make. And then having the Omni Negate that Toad provides you with, adding back your resources like your tier caches that are in the graveyard, can just straight up like just win you the game sometimes. You play the 1 Superdreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max for time. This deck does take a while, especially because like the nature of Yubel isn't really like an OTK deck, even though it can. We don't really do that. Our games tend to be really grindy, so unfortunately we do end up going to time a lot, and this is just one of those cards that you have to play, you know. But we're not playing the the Juggernaut Leave on top of that, just because I don't think it's needed for this specific version. If you're playing pure Yubel, then you 100% play the Juggernaut Leave, but since we play all these Tearlament cards as well, it's just not needed. And then for the final Exceed, we play the 1 Zombie Vampire. Card's phenomenal in normal tier. It's no different in this version, and it's only going to get better once Phantom of Yubel eventually comes out along with the Grave Squirmer. You know, you mill 4 cards from the top of your deck and the top of your opponent's deck, and then you special summon the best one. And there's so many good targets for this card, right? You can get Samsara D Lotus. You can add, you can special summon Spirit of Yubel. You can special summon Fenrir. You can special summon Reinoheart. The list just goes on and on and on. And And that's just for the special summons, right? Just being able to mill a lot of cards as well. Like you can mill your sullieks, you can mill your screams, you can mill your king sarcophaguses. And because we play opening of the spirit gates, we can always get those back as well. And this card just, it does so much. And it fixes one of like the main issues that I had before too, where even though we were playing like the entire Yubel engine, right? We're playing 3 Scream, 3 Rhino, Scheiren, 3 Tear Cache. I did have some trouble milling at times, and this card just remedies so many of those issues. But yeah, just the one is fine. And then that's it for the Exceed monsters. Now we can go to the links. We still play the one Salamangreat Almiraj for when those plays when we decide to normal summon Dark Beckoning Beast or Samsara D Lotus, and they, in turn negate it with like an Imperm or a Veiler. You just gotta link those guys off, and then as long as you have opening of the Spirit Gates, you can bring them back and try again. Then we play a bunch of Link 2s. So the first one is Muckraker from the Underworld. Card's okay, it brings back your Fiends from the grave, but then it locks you into Fiends for the rest of this turn. There's some cute things, like I said. It can bring back your Tearlaments Kaleidoheart because it's a Fiend, if you really want to, or you can bring back your Yubels, your Samsara D Lotuses, or whatever, but this is pretty much just like a last resort play. You should never try to make this like the focus point of your combo, or at least just save it for the end, never in like the beginning or the middle, because it does limit you a lot. Then we're trying out Barricadeborg blocker, and this is like something that you used to see in Tearlaments, right? Because you'd make this, you discard like Kelbeck and Ergido, you mill 5, and then during the end phase, that's the most important part. You can add back 1 continuous spell or 1 field spell from your graveyard and add it to your hand. And we play a lot of those, right? You can add back your planets, you can add back your screams, you can add back your nightmare pains, your opening of the spirit gates. There's so many cards that you can add back and then just continue to play on your next turn. And then on top of that, for whatever reason, while this card's face up on the field, your opponent can't destroy your face up spells and traps. So and we play a lot of continuous spells and traps, so just having that protection from cards like Feather Duster or Lightning Storm is pretty invaluable, honestly. And yeah, so and then we play a couple other ones as well. We play the one IP Madquerena. Since we're not playing the Unchained engine, that means we're not playing, Unchained Soul and Rage or all those other guys. So this is the next best thing that we can use during our opponent's turn to link summon with. And we play 2 different targets. So the first one is Spright Sprind. I wasn't playing this originally, but I saw a really good and like useful comment, right, saying where thanks to Dark Beckoning Beast and just all the Link 2s in general, you can make Spright Sprind, and then much like the tier deck, you just send Merrli during your opponent's turn, then you fusion summon into like a Kaleidoheart, and it doesn't even have to be Kaleidoheart. As long as you have planet face up on the field, even something like a Dragostapelia can go a long way in just winning you the game, because you get the pop, you get the negate, and you do so many things. And then because we play Exceed monsters that are typically on the field as well, like the Zombie Vampire and Bahamut Shark, you get the additional effect where you can detach a material from this cards and bounce a monster on your opponent's field. And yeah, it's just a really solid card. And then the other one is SP Little Knight, because SP Little Knight's a good card. And that's it for the Link monsters. Then we just play our fusions. Your traditional Super Poly targets, even though we don't main Super Poly, we still side it. You still make these even without those in the main deck, just because of the Tearlament monsters in general. So you play the one Mudragon of the Swamp, the one Garura Wings of Resonant Life, and the one Predaplant Dragostapelia. All really good cards, all very easy to make, and you will be making them a lot. And then for the one Tearlament fusion, you play the one Tearlaments Kaleidoheart. It's a Fiend monster, so it doesn't get locked under Muckraker. It spins cards, it foolishes tier cards. It does a lot for this deck. It's a 3k beat stick. Yeah, card's just good. And then for the final monster, you just play the one Yubel, the Loving Defender forever. Even though we don't main deck Super Polys, and like I said earlier, Eternal Favorite, while it's good, we don't really use the Super Poly effect. Sometimes it does come up, right? And you'd rather just have this just in case instead of being caught lacking. So yeah, you gotta play the one Yubel, the Living Defender. And with that, that's the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!